Hi, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and today we've got a fantastic training for you where we're going to show you how to do specific attachments to any customer or file, as well as show a thumbnail for anyone. So please stay tuned. It's going to be a fantastic training. Alrighty, let's get started. Basically, the idea of today's training is I want to able to attach multiple files, regardless of the file type, to a specific customer. This helps us organize files for customers. We can organize files per jobs or for patients or whatever type of business we have. And some of the features that you're going to see today, like highlighting the selected row, we've gone over in previous training videos. So make sure if you're interested in that and you want to learn how to do that, just locate on YouTube or Facebook page the highlight selected row. We also have save and load customers, where basically the idea is that if we make a change to a specific cell, those changes automatically get saved down in the cell below. And that as well has been covered in a previous training order under the Automate tab, Save and File, I believe, video. So check that out. That's been covered. So we're not going to go into too much detail on that today because that's been covered. The idea of today's lesson is the ability to attach a specific file to a customer. And let's go ahead and show you how that will work. Basically, all we do is we'll browse for a specific file. Let's say we want to add a picture. We can click OK, and then it'll go ahead and add that picture to that specific customer, and then we'll get a preview that shows up here. And like I do with most of my trainings, why is this important? There's a lot of reasons for this particular feature. A couple may be if you have a clinic or medical practice and you want to keep track of contracts, pictures, you want to keep track of specific files, signed PDF documents. So all that can be organized with something like this. Let me go ahead and show you a few examples of some applications that I have done for customers. For example, this particular one is a job information. Basically, we have multiple jobs on the right within a schedule, multiple employees and those jobs scheduled, and then all of the job details here. And then if you scroll down below, you'll see specific attachments. These are attachments for the specific job selected. And you can also, in this particular instance, we can select and we can open all the files if we choose. We can view them all, and we can add additional files and folders. That's one instance. Another instance, we could use this in perhaps like a medical or a clinic type of information, like in this particular job. We have here a 4-staff scheduler that's one of my products. And basically, when you select a particular contact, all the information shows up, right? And so here it's empty, right, for this. But if we select another one, like let's say Larry, and on this particular contact, we have multiple attachments. So simply selecting one, we can have a preview if we want. If it's a picture format, we can have a preview. So the attachment feature can be extremely helpful. And let's get into it and how that's done. Let's go ahead and close these other applications out so that we make sure we're not using any additional resources. And then we'll show you exactly how I did that on that. And we'll go ahead and expand the screen so you can see what's going on here. And basically, what's going on here is we have two sheets. One where we track the customer information, and the second sheet that is for attachments. And all of our attachments are stored in this table. We have a customer ID, which is key. This allows us to know which attachments belong to which customer. A file name, which is the name of the file, the type of file. The full path, that's the location of the file, and then the row. And I'm going to go into why this is important. And obviously this is row 4, but I'll go into why that's important, why we have to incorporate the row. Okay, so what we've done, like I said, each customer must have a customer ID. Okay, so you want to make sure that if you're doing this on your own, you have a unique qualifier. And sometimes customer names are hard to use as unique qualifiers if there's two names that are the same, or if the customer changes it, it can be kind of tricky. So I like to use an ID, and if you're programming this on your own, you may want to use an ID that the customer cannot change, right? So for every new customer, you give them a new ID, and sometimes I even hide that unique number from the customer. This way the end user cannot actually change that, so it's kind of nice, so that way it's always unique. And just to go over quickly, when we highlight it, when we select a row, what that does is it changes this row here. Selected customer row 17, you see that selected customer row changing? And what I've done is under conditional formatting, home, conditional formatting, okay, manage rules, and basically what I've done is I've used this rule. There's two conditions. One, H3 must not be blank, okay? And that is very important because I want to make sure that at least one item, I could have gone with anything. That H3, that means there's going to be an email. I could go, I guess I can go, let's say go D3. We'll change this to D3, although it doesn't make so much sense. But basically what I want to say is if there is content in the row, highlight it, okay? And then the second condition is B13. Remember, B13, actually it should be B12. Let's go ahead and change that. B12 must match the row because that's the selected customer row. So we'll go ahead and update that. I think we have multiple rows in here. Okay, so there we go. Now the idea is to highlight the selected row. Okay, so but the idea is if it's a blank row, remember if there's nothing here, it's not going to select it. If you put something here, right, and then we increase the range, it is going to highlight automatically. And how do we know that range? Let's go ahead and go into the VBA so we can go over that. The other, before we do that, the other is the file name. I want to highlight this row too, okay? So here, every time I select here, the attached row shows up here because I want to know. All right, let's go ahead and see how we do that. All right, into the VBA model we go, and if you can use the Developers tab, Visual Basic. If you don't have the Visual Basic Developers tab, you can access it through Options and under Customize ribbon and then the Developers tab here. Make sure that is checked. That'll get you into the VBA by selecting this, or you can use a shortcut Alt F11. We'll go ahead and use Alt F11, and that'll get us into the VBA. Okay, and the first up, you'll notice we have some code right here on the customers, okay? And I've commented this out temporarily, and that just helps us to load it. But basically we have two different conditions. One is if something changes, okay, if something changes on the worksheet, or if we select it. So that means everything within this code is on selection, okay? So remember, when we selected anything in between D14 and J28. Okay, you might want to make this 2800. If you got a large table, let's go ahead and make that 2800, right? So that means that anything, if we select anywhere from D14 anywhere to J, right, up to whatever row you want, what happens? Something happens. And in our case, that's not it. In our case, we want that to show up right here. We're going to make this B12 equals the target row, okay? B12 here equals the target row, so that row changes. The next thing I want to do is I want to load the customer, right? When we select a row, I want to load that customer. We went over that in another video, so we're not going to go into details. But it basically, what it's going to do is it's going to go through this hidden row here, okay? And it's going to say B15, okay? That's the customer ID, okay? Customer ID shows up here. So E2, so what the code is going to do is it's going to run through this column, all right, and it's going to place all the information above. If you want to go into detail about that, I have a specific lesson for you on that under customer save. So we're not going to go to this one. It's focused on attachments. And to do that, we have basically two macros. Okay, one is open the attachment. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to open the folder. Okay, we select a file. Okay, and then we click OK, and then that folder and that file show up here. Now how do we do that? Let's go over in the code and see how that is done. Into the VBA model here, and then we have basically three macros, and I'll go over them. Okay, the attachment macros where most of it's going on, most of the work is going on. Let's scroll up, and we'll go through this line by line. Okay, we'll increase the space here so you can see it. And basically, this is the add, attachment add. This is the macro that I have assigned to this button here. Okay, right click, assign macro, okay, attachment add, okay. That is the macro that I've assigned to it. So let's go over that. The first, I've dimensioned the file folder as a file dialog. What this is going to do is it's going to allow us to open up that file dialog. Okay. Then I've got a few other names. I want to know the file name, the name of the file. I want to know the file path, the file type, and the customer ID. All those are a string. Now, customer ID you saw was only numbers, but I'm going to keep it a string now. That's okay. We're not going to use it. We're not going to count with it. So I've defined it as string. Theoretically, if your customer ID was only numbers and you needed to count it, you could probably dimension it as long, but for our purposes, string is just fine. And then I want to know the last row, okay? Because the reason is when we add an attachment, we need to also place it in this table, right? But we need to know, we don't want to place it on top of anything. We need to know the last row with content, and then we want to basically put it right here. Whatever, the last row plus 1. So this is where we want to put our new attachment information. Okay, that's the reason we're going to need the last row. So first is the customer ID. The customer ID is sheet 1 B15. Okay, that's the customer ID, and that's really, really important. Okay, because we need to also put that in the attachments as well. And we know that that customer ID is stored at sheet range B15 value. Okay, sheet 1 B15. We know that customer ID, right? Right here. Okay, so we know where that is, so we've defined that. And now what we need to do is we need to basically open up that folder. Okay, so we're going to set the file folder, application file dialog. Basically, this line of code simply opens up the folder. Okay, this line of code simply does this. Okay, it opens up that folder. This is called the file dialog. Okay, so that line of code simply opens this up. Okay, and we're going to press cancel. So that's what this line of code is. And now we're saying with folder, we need to give it a title. You see that title here, right? Title. And take a look at this. All right, this title can show up right here. You see that title right up there, select file to attach. So you can write anything up there you want in the title. Okay, all right. So that's where that comes from. And then basically we're saying filters, add files, and here's where you would put in your type. Now I'm saying you can put in any type of file, but let's say you said I only want to give the user the ability to add Excel files. You could do something like this, XLS, and then get rid of the star, okay, comma, star, okay, XLSX. I believe that's right. Okay, so now if we do that, right, and then we could do all Excel files, okay, all Excel files. Let's say we wanted to filter that. We only want them to do just some files. Okay, let's go ahead and run that macro again. Okay, and now look, now we have all Excel files, right? We don't have any choices. You see, that could be good. But in our case, for this particular purposes, we want to give the user the ability to upload any type of file, so we're not going to filter that, but you may. There are times when I'll do imports or I'll want specific pictures where you're definitely going to want to filter it. If you want to have them install a logo or something like that, you want to limit it to just picture files or just Excel files or just text files. So that's the place to do it. Okay, all right, we'll go ahead and cancel that out and Control Z, undo. All right, okay, good. And now we're there. Go back there, and so back into this. So that's how we filter. That's how we filter using that. Okay, this one, if shows -1, then go. You see, when I cancel out of that, here's that means if user has not selected anything, then go to no selection. Right? If I remove this line, we'll probably get a bug if I cancel. Let's try it. Okay. Let me just go ahead and get rid of this too. All right, so let's go ahead and out. Now, if without that line of code, if we run this, okay, we're going to get an invalid procedure. So we do need that. It's very important. That keeps it from bugging out. Okay. So we'll go ahead and undo that. And now file path. This is going to say when a user selects a specific item, what is the path, right? The selected item is the path. That means it's the entire path, like C:\\/ desktop my user, it's the entire path. We want that entire path. If we need to open it up again, we need to know the entire path. The entire path looks something like this. Okay, see this? That's the path. That's the entire path. This is the file name, backpane. Okay, this is the extension, JPEG. We're going to need all of those. Okay, we're going to need all of those. So I want to make sure you understand how we differentiate between those two. Okay, back into the VBA. So we know the file name, right? Now the file name, we can extract that. In our case up there, it was just the picture name. This is basically the directory of the file path. So this little line of code extracts the file name, okay? So let's go ahead and show you what that is. So if in our attachments, right, if this is our file path, our file name is JPEG. Here it is, backpane JPG. This is our file name. So that line of code extracts it, okay? Directory, file name. Now what we need is, I want to know the type. Okay, this one's a little bit more trickier because we need to know what type. In that case, it's JPG, but it could be JPEG, it could be XLS, it could be XLSS, right? So what I want to do is I want to get the extension, but theoretically, I can't just get the last 3 letters because it could be 4, right? Some extensions have 4 letters, some have 3. So we're going to use this line of code right here to extract that. And basically, what I'm going to say here is the file name. Remember, the file name is backpane JPG. The file name, I want to get the directory of the file name, okay? And I want to extract the period. I want to find where that period is, okay? All right, I want to find it. This line of code is going to find out where that line of code is, okay? And then this line is going to say what is the entire length of the file name, the number of characters. So let's say it's 20 characters, right? And the period is found at 16 characters, right? It's going to say, okay, now take the rightmost letters. Basically, it's going to take the last 4 letters. So this line of code extracts that extension regardless if it is 3 characters or if it is 4 characters based on the location of the dot. Okay? So that just will extract our file type. So now we've got file path, we've got file name, and we've got file type, and we've got customer ID. Those are the 4 types of details that we need to put inside our attachments database, okay, our attachments table. So now that we've got all that, now we can go ahead and put them in. With sheet 2, okay, so now we're going to focus on sheet 2. Sheet 2 is the attachments, okay. So one thing we need to do is first we need to know where do we put it? Where do we put it? Well, this is going to say the last row. What is the last row? In this case, the last row is 5, okay? But we don't want the last row. We want one more than the last row, okay? We want one more, so that's the next available row, all right? So let's go ahead and drag this over here. And so we're saying the last row here plus 1 is the first available attachment row, okay? So now we know what we could really call this the first available row, probably more detail, but you get the point. So then all we're going to do is plug in our information. Range D and the last row equals a customer ID, okay? D and the last row, customer ID. E, file name. F, type. G, full path. And then H, the row. And we want to put a formula in here because we're going to be able to filter this, and we need to know. We can't put a static. Now we know the row, right? We can't put 6 in there. If it gets filtered or changed or something like that, I want a, if it gets sorted or if it gets filtered, we want this to stay dynamic. So we put in a formula, okay? That means regardless of if it gets sorted, it's not going to change. In other words, if we go ahead and sort this, right, then it's going to be all messed up. So that's why we always use the variable. We always use a formula, okay? So that's very important. So now we have all the information. D, customer ID, E, file name, F, file type, G, file path, and then H is the row. Here is the formula. I'm putting in the formula, okay? We're good. Okay, now we're good. Now we have all of the data. Now we have all the data in the attachments, okay? So once I've uploaded a file, we have it in there, but now what I want to do is I want to get it in here, okay? I want to put it in there. And you see that bug? Let me go ahead and debug that. Let's show you how to get around that. Okay, often when highlighting multiple cells, we don't want code to run, right? We just want to exit out. We want code, what I want is I want code to run. Let's go ahead and reset this. I want code to run only when I select a specific cell. So to get around that, okay, let's go. What I often do is go into Visual Basic, and in that customer sheet, a good way to do that, okay, we selected H3 through H10, right? And what I did is I selected a lot of cells, okay? If target dot count, okay, is greater than 1, then exit sub. That means basically if the user selects more than one cell at a time, just exit it out, okay? And that's helpful. That reduced bid. You can do that on change, and we may even put it up here as well. You could theoretically put it up here, right? And that would be good for any different type. So that way, because often we do get bugs when we select multiple, highlight multiple cells, and so that's a really good. You'll often see that, so that's the way you want to get rid of it. And now we can. That works too. So I'm glad that came up so we can show you how to get it. Remember that if target count is greater than 1, the only thing you have to be careful of in this case, let's say we're selecting this, but this is a merged cell. Let's say H1 and HI were merged and we want something to happen on select. It wouldn't. So in that case, I might change this to, I might change the code to if it's greater than 2. Because if you want something to happen on a merged cell, keep that in mind that nothing will happen because a merged cell is considered 2. So you would maybe need to change that to 2. So keep that in mind. But we don't have any merged cells, so for our purposes, we're okay. We're okay with just the 1. And so now, how do we get this preview to show up? Okay, but before that, how do we get this file name? We've just uploaded it. We only put it in here, right? But how do we get this information into our customer file? Okay, well, we can do that with one of my favorite things, and that's advanced filter. Advanced filter I do love, and basically what I want to say is when we select a customer, I want all of the attachments. I want all of the attachments to show up here. Okay, so let's say we add additional ones. Okay. We'll put in some more folders. Let's go ahead and we can add Word documents. We can add additional information, PDFs. Okay, and maybe one more picture. So the idea is that I want to make sure that all of these are saved under a specific customer only. Okay, and we know that because we know the customer ID. All these are going to be saved under the customer ID. So basically what I want to do is I want to tell Excel, okay, I want you to look at all of this table and I want you to filter out everything but just the ones for this customer. Now this customer is 1023, okay? And we can do that with an advanced filter. And scrolling over to the right, we do have our advanced filter here. So basically through VBA, what I've said is use an advanced filter, take the customer ID, create an advanced filter, and list only those attachments that are specific to this customer. Then take the information, take the file name, take the type, okay, and actually take the row, take those 3 items and bring them over to here. And you'll notice I have the row here. This is meant to be hidden, or you can put it here. You can change the font. You won't want to see this, an end user won't want to see this, but simply just changing the font or moving it to a hidden row. But I wanted you to see it, you would just hide the font there, but I want you to see it for our purposes. But this is not intended to be seen by, once you finish, you might want to put it right here, okay? I would put it right there and then you hide these 2 columns. That's probably the best bet. For our purposes, I want you to see what's going on here, so we've put it here, but you won't want to see that. So the idea is to take all of those and put them here. And not only that, not only that do I want them here, but I want them in a specific order. I want the most recent at the top, and I want the oldest at the bottom, okay? So that's the way I want to see it. So in other words, we're putting the newest ones at the end of the table, right? We're putting those here. So when the advanced filter comes across, it's still going to be the oldest ones at the top and the newest ones at the bottom, right? But we actually want the reverse order. Now we could run a sort, we could do the sort, but instead what I want to do is through VBA, I want to start at the end, I want to start at the bottom, and I want to work my way up to the top. Okay, so if I start here and I put this information here and then I go next, 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 right? So basically I'm working up in an upward direction from the lowest to the top. So that's the idea, and we can do that with a for next loop, and let's go ahead and go over that. And next what I've done is a macro called attachment refresh, okay, and that's going to basically refresh it, and that's the next line of code. Okay, let's go over this one. I've defined all of the information that we will use, including customer ID, the row, the last attachment row, the last filter row, and the filter row. So when we run an advanced filter, we need a few information. Okay, first I need to know what's the last row. I want to filter all this information, right? I know the first row, I know the first column, and I know the last column, but I don't know the last row. I don't want to filter more than I need to. So we need to get that last row. All right, we can do that with that same line of code here. So basically, we're saying is the last row is D. Remember, D is the column. D is that customer ID column. I'm going to use that. You want to make sure you use a column that's always going to have data. Always is required. In this case, for sure, we're going to always have a customer ID. So I've used column D. Okay, so before that, all I've done is cleared out any previous advanced filters. Okay, so I want to clear out any previous advanced filters, and what that does is let's go ahead and minimize that, bring this over. So what I want to do is I want to say, okay, before you run a new, I want to clear this information, delete, and I want to clear this information. I want to go all the way to the bottom and I want to clear it. I want a nice fresh table to run our advanced filter on. So we have to clear that out. So we do that through VBA, and we're going to clear that advanced. So we do that with this line of code. Once it's all cleared out, then I'm going to take that customer ID and I'm going to place it right in AA2, right here. I'm going to place it right here. Okay. Once we run our advanced filter, it's going to take all this information and it's going to filter this right, and it's going to put all the results right here based on that customer ID filter that we set. So we can do that. So that's why AA2 equals customer ID. The last row, we know the last row of the table. Okay, and this is a caveat. If you're going to get a bug, if there's no data in the attachment, you're going to get a bug, right? It's going to say, in other words, if there's zero information, you would get a bug. Okay, so what that basically says, if the last row is less than 4, then just skip the whole process. You don't need to go through it. There's no data, so let's not. So this line of code, if the last row is less than 4, then go to no data. No data is way down here at the bottom. Okay, we've now defined the last row, we've cleared out the data, and now we're ready for our advanced filter, and that's this line right here. Okay, what we're saying is this here is the original data. Okay, D3 through H in the last row. That's the original data. Okay, what do we want to do with that? We want to copy it. Okay, I don't want to filter it in place. Okay, I want to copy it to a different range. Okay, I want to take that original data, I want to copy it over here on the right side. Okay, copy. Okay, now what is the criteria? What are we going to filter this based on? The criteria is the filter, and this is AA1 through AE2. Okay, so if you have multiple criteria, you could do that as well. Let's say you only wanted pictures to show up. You could put in, so our criteria is this range right here. You could do customer ID and type. Maybe you want to filter only specific types. You would add it right here. That helps us for our criteria. So we know our criteria range, and now all we have to do is tell Excel, well, where do you want to put the data? We want to put the data right here, AA3 through AE4. Through AE3. And remember, the most important thing is these fields here, right, this data, they must match the headers here. Must match. Okay, so copy, the best way to do it is just copy. Okay, control, hold down the control, paste values. Okay, and we got some other code running, so that's the best way you do it, just to paste those values right here to make sure those headers are always the same as your original data. Okay, so that is the way we do it. So the last is the copy to range AA3 through A, and that's it, and we want only the unique records. Okay, so that is going to get us our information, right? Now we need to know the last filter. Let's go ahead and run that. Okay, and I stopped the code right here. So basically you see what that's gotten us. Okay, now I want to say, okay, I want to go to the last row. I want to find the last row of the filter row. So we're going to use AA. We need that last row. So let's go ahead and get that last row. The last filter row is AA99. You can use a large number here, and L up. So that's going to tell us our last row. Okay. Now again, if the last filter row is less than 4, then just exit out. There's no filter data, so there's nothing to transfer over. We don't need to continue because there's no data. And now what I want to do is I'll run one through that table. But I'm going to start at the end. I'm going to start at, let's get that. I'm going to start at the end here, in this case row 7, and I'm going to move up to row 4. It's going to go from 7 to 4, okay, in this case. All right, let's go ahead and move that over. It's going to go to 7 to 4, so you can see that. That is what we're going to do with the code. And so here's how we do it. We go from last filter row, for the filter row equals the last filter row to 4 step -1. That's important. When you're going in a negative, when you're going back or using negative, we need to know step, okay? -1 at a time, so it's going to go from 7 to 6 to 5 to 4, okay? So we're going in the reverse. The reason we go in reverse is that we want the most recent to appear. And the next thing we have to do is we have to know where to place it, okay? Where are we going to place this? Well, we know we're going to place it in the, let's go ahead and set the size of this so you can see everything on the screen. And go back into the customer file. So we're going to start here on H3, okay? H3, and we're going to work our way down, right? So we need to know what is the row we're going to start on. We always know it's H. We know the file name is going to be an H, and we know the type is going to go in I, and we know the row number is going to go in K, but we don't know the row. Okay, so we're going to start at row 3, so we need to define that row. Okay, here the attachment row equals 3. Now this is important. We've done this way before the for next loop. It's going to start at 3. Every time we add one, it's going to grow. Okay, so now in our for next loop, within our for next loop, we have to add those items we just spoke of. H, we know the H. The attachment row starting at 3 equals A, B in the filter row. Okay, copy over the file name. The file name, okay, the file name is in AB, right? AB, and our attachment row, remember, is here. Our filter row, we're going to call that the filter row. Remember, there's two different rows we're talking about. The attachment row, okay, that's on the customer. That's the attachment row. Those are two different rows. Okay, the customer row here. The attachment row is here. Okay, so two different rows that we're going through. Okay, the filter row. AB in the filter row. Copy over the file name. Sheet 1. The type goes next, and then the row goes over. So we're going to copy over those 3 items. Now, once we do that, we need to make sure the attachment row grows. If it doesn't grow, it's going to paste every single one in 3. So remember to say, okay, now move to the next row, okay? Because this is not part of it. So we need to grow this row. One more. Otherwise, everything's going to be pasted in 3. We don't want that. So we need to move that attachment row to 4 after it gets finished. Okay, and then we need to say, hey, well, we only have a limited area here, right? We can't do that forever, right? So we know that we have until row 10. So we want to make sure, hey, if we get to row 10, stop. That's it. Okay, we don't have any more space in this particular. So basically saying if If the attachment row is 11, right, we've just added one. If it's 11, then exit the sub. Table is full, okay? And that's it. That is how we do that, okay? So when we select a specific, let's go ahead and continue with this code, okay, and remove the stop. All right, so that's it. That's how we get it, okay? The last part of this little trick is to get that preview to show up, okay? When you select a line, I want the preview to show up. Right now we only have it on pictures, so okay. I do not have a technique for getting miniature PDFs to show up, miniature Excel and miniature Word, but I'm working on that. So if you know a way to get a Word document in a picture and then preview it, that would be really great, but I think it would be very slow. I think it would be very slow. So, but I'd love to do that. But in our part 2, we're going to show you how to use icons for this. So we're going to have a Word icon appear here. We're going to have a PDF icon appear here, and one for Excel. So we're going to show you that in part 2. Okay, so that's going to be kind of cool. And so for now, is the next step is how do we get this little picture to show up right in the middle? All right, and these pictures could be very large, so we need to, not only do we need to get it to show up in the right place, we need to have it the size just right, and we need to make sure that the ratio, the width to the aspect ratio, remains the same. So that's a really important part. Let's take a look at how we managed to get that preview back into the VBA. We'll pull it over. Let's go ahead and reduce this and bring it over so you can see it. And let's go ahead and skip to the display thumbnail. After that, we'll get into how we delete them. But display thumbnail, so basically what I want to do is I want to take that picture, all right, I want to reduce it with a proper aspect ratio so it doesn't go outside of those cells, and then I want to put it in exact size in the exact place. Okay, and we can do that. First of all, what I want to do is I want to delete if there is a thumbnail appearing, I want to delete it. So if there's anything old that's remaining, we delete it. So we can do that. We always set, regardless of the picture, we always give it the same name. Okay, it's always going to be thumbnail picture. Okay, this way we don't need to worry about having too many pictures or something, only one's going to be displayed. We make sure we set that same thumbnail picture to this name always. Okay, so what we've done is if B13 equals empty, then exit sub. So that means that B13 is our, let's go ahead and move this over here. That tells us what our selected attachment row is. So when we select a row, that number changes. Okay, so this is how we know. So if this is blank for any reason, right, we know we don't want to continue with that because there's not going to be the ability to pull the information out. So that's why we covered that. And then the reason is we have these two lines up. If for some reason there's no picture showing up, if we don't have on air resume next and on air go 0, this is gonna bug out. If there's no picture here, we can't delete it. That'll create a bug. So that's why we have on air resume next and on air go to 0. This will avoid the bug appearing if for some reason there is no picture named thumbnail picture. So if there is, it'll delete it. If there is not, it'll just skip it. So that's helpful for these 3 lines of code. The attachment row, okay, that's the row, is B13 value. Okay, that's the selected row. Okay, in this case it's 3. Okay, 3. All right, so we know the row, and let's continue. Now we say we need to know. Now I need to know, because we don't know the location, right? The location is here, right? We need to know the location, right? I need to know this value here. I need to know where to pull that picture from, where to open it from. But it's here. It's not anywhere here, right? But how do we get it? Well, we know the row. We know the row in the database, right? We know the row is 8, right? So if we know the row is 8, right? And we know the column is G, that's all we need. G8, we know where to pull it up from, okay? So we know the row, 8, and we know the column. So that's all we need to know to pull that figure up. So the attachment table row is K and the attachment row. K3. Remember, K3. What's in K3? K3 is 8. Okay? So the attachment row, okay, the attachment row here is in K3, 8. So that just gives us our number 8. So that's really, really helpful. Okay? Now we know the row of the table. And now we got if file type is JPG, I'm going to define, I'm saying if it's any of these file types, okay, file type, and remember file type is I and the attachment row, okay, we defined it here, right here, I3, I, whatever it is, whatever your row is here. So in our case, I3. So our file type is JPG. So that means basically we're saying, hey, if it's a picture file, if the type is a picture, then we should display that thumbnail. Okay? So everything here, right? If, then continue. Because if it's not, if it's else, we're not going to do anything, okay? Because in this case, we're only displaying those that have pictures. We're only concerned with file types that are pictures. JPG, PNG, GIF, JPG, or BMP. And we have those 5 file types, okay? So now we say, okay, well, we need to open that picture, but what is the path of that picture? Sheet 2, that's our attachment sheet. G, remember, G is the column, right? We know that those files are in column G. And then the attachment table row. In this case, it was G8. So we know the file path is basically sheet 2, G8. That's the full file path. Now it's simple. Now we just need to use the line of code with dot. Now we remember dot because we've defined sheet 1 already. Sheet 1 dot pictures insert. And what are we inserting? The file path. Okay, that's the full file path. Now it says, okay, now we've opened it. Now let's do a few things with it. One, let's place it to the left, J3 of J3, okay? Place it just to the left of J3, okay? J3, right? That puts it right there, okay? So that tells us where to place it, okay? That's as far as left, but now what about the top? The top also J3. Now let's assign it a name. I want to make sure that those thumbnails always have the same name. So when we delete them, we're only deleting one. So we're going to give it this name, thumbnail. We're only going to show one at a time, and that one's going to have thumbnail picture. Fair enough. Okay. These 2 lines here basically move it a little bit towards the middle without this line of code. If we take this line of code out, okay, and we select it, it's going to move it. I want it centered, right? So I'm going to move it over about 20, okay? Right, so we can use that line of code to move it over. So with the increment left 20, it adds 20 pixels a little bit. So it adds it to the right, actually, you know, or adds it to the left, I should say, 20 pixels, moving it to the right. And then the top, it moves it just a few tiny pixels away from that top. Without that, it's going to appear right on top. It would appear right here, right, or right there. So with that line of code, it moves it just in the right space, just a few hairs down from that line. So that really allows us to place it. Okay, now we've placed it in the right, but what about how do we get the size? Okay, how do we get the size right? I want that size just right. Okay, and basically what I'm saying is, well, I want to make it the width. I want to move the width or the height to a specific area. Okay, so in this case, right, it looks like our width, right, is greater than our height, right? So we're only going to reduce 1, but since we've constrained the options, right, since in this particular case, right, for this picture, as with all pictures, we've locked the aspect ratio. So that means we only have to reduce 1. As long as this is locked, which it is by default, that means we just need to reduce 1, right? We just need to reduce 1, and then it automatically will reduce. So that means, right, when we change just 1, like when we change the width to, let's just say 1 inch, right, they're both going to reduce automatically. Okay, so that's gonna help us. So what I'm saying is, we first have to figure out which one's bigger. Which one is bigger? Whichever bigger is one, that's the one I want to reduce. If the height is greater than the width, then set the height. But if the width is greater, then reduce the width. So this code allows us to reduce it to a specific size and keep the aspect ratio. So that's really important. We just need to know which is bigger, the height or the width, and then reduce them down. That's it. That's it with the code. That's how we get to display those thumbnails. So it's pretty quick, pretty easy, and it's always nice to be able to see those specifically, and it's nice and it's perfect and fits in there. And for your purposes, when you do yours, just play with these numbers, okay? Play with these numbers, play with the size, get it just to the right, play with the increments here and the top, get it to place it exactly the right place and the right size that you want in your application. So you can do that very easily with those. And the last feature is the ability to delete it. I want to be able to delete it. I want to click here and I want to delete it, okay? And then I want it to refresh. So not only does it delete, I want it to delete here, and then I want to go and refresh this again, okay? So to do that, let's go ahead and do it. So delete it, basically, we need to first make sure that there's an actual row. We need to make sure K and the active cell row equals empty, then please select a row to delete first. Example, if I select this one, right, there's no row associated here, right? Please, right? There's nothing associated. So there has to be something here, right? K and the active cell row must be, we have to know, if we're going to delete it, we have to know a row in the attachments table to delete, okay? So we need to put that caveat there. So once we do have something, we know that we can delete a specific row. So in this case, that attachment row that we're going to be deleting will be 6. Okay, so if we're going to delete row 6, we now know that we're going to delete the thumbnail first. Okay, let's go ahead and delete the thumbnail. If there is any, it'll be deleted automatically, so that's important. We want to delete the file and the thumbnail. And then the attachment row is sheet 1, K, and the active cell row. We just defined that. Then it's simple, sheet 2, attachment row, and attachment row, entire row, delete. Then all we need to do is run that refresh macro one more time so that we refresh it. We run that advanced filter, and since we have no, that line isn't there anymore, it will be removed automatically. Then I want to select whichever one's on top, right? I want to select, basically what I want to do is if we delete this, right, I want to show something. So we delete this, I want to select this one and have it display, right? I want whatever's on top, I want to display it if there's a picture. So when we delete this, it selects this automatically and it goes up there. So that's all we do. Once we select this, it automatically generates that preview. All right, and that's it. Okay, and let me just go over one more thing I think we missed. Under the customer, okay, when we select H3 through H10, we run this code. Okay, we tell it, hey, this is the target row, B13, and we run this code. That's what we do. That's the code that displays that the code that we just went over. So that's how we got it to display. So we select, all we do is select it there. All right, and that's how we get it to appear. So that's it. And this is actually one of 2 parts. And I'm really excited. In part 2, let me go ahead and give you a little bit of a preview on that so you can see what that would look like. And in part 2, we're going to go a little bit deeper into these files where we're actually going to be able to do additional features where we not only add, but we can browse all. Okay, here's a good one. We can previews of PDFs, documents. If there's no visibility, we can have no preview available. We can have different ones. And we also have the ability, now let's say you have maybe 30 or 40 different attachments. We want to be able to filter all of those. So we can click here and this will filter all of them. Okay? And we also want the ability to attach them to specific folders. Maybe we want all of our attachments to be copied over into specific folders, just like this. So we can automatically create folders based on our customer name. So we're going to go over that in version 2. So that'll come out next week. I think you're going to really love that. And we're also going to have the ability to specifically open. If we want to open a document, it'll just open a picture, just like we did there. Okay, so that's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to showing that to you as well. Thank you for joining me on this Attachments 1. And if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear them. I'll make sure that there is a free download available. Just comment attachments 1 in the comments below, or feel free to click the link and make sure you put those text in there exactly in the messenger so that we can get you that download as quick as possible. Please share this, and thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great one.